In our last episode, we took a look at virtualenv and discovered how easy it makes it for us to create isolated development environments for each of our projects. Towards the end of that episode, we saw how we could hook our scripts into that workflow, though the mechanism by which we can do that left something to be desired. In this episode, we'll take a look at a powerful companion app called virtualenvwrapper. It essentially wraps virtualenv in a user-friendly set of shell functions. We'll also see the uber-powerful hooks mechanism that virtualenvwrapper provides that is really and truly just head and shoulders above the same functionality provided by bare-bones virtualenv. To get us started, let's take a look at the formal definition for virtualenvwrapper, as well as its full feature set. Go ahead and open up your browser and navigate to the virtualenvwrapper documentation. If you Google simply for virtualenvwrapper, it may not be the first link in the results, so make sure the link you click on is the one for readthedocs.org. And here in just the first few paragraphs, we actually pretty much learn everything that we need to know about virtualenvwrapper and why you'd want to use it. Essentially, it's a set of extensions to the virtualenv tool that we've been using. And these extensions include wrappers for creating, deleting virtual environments, and basically just managing the overall development workflow. Now, it's got some really great features that we can take advantage of, and for the most part, they're all listed here, so let's just take a quick look at this. Essentially, it organizes all of your virtual environments for you into one place. So before, we were actually seeing that every time we create a virtual environment, we have a new directory right there where we called the command. And what that makes us do is actually have to manage all of the directories for our virtual environments, when really what we want to do is just kind of create a virtual environment as is. It's basically an environment. Why even have a directory in the first place? And that's what this is going to do for us. It's going to manage all of those directories for us, and they're essentially just going to become invisible to us. And all we're going to know about is the idea of an actual virtual environment. So this is a really nice feature right here. And this is the main reason for using virtualenvwrapper. And one of those is basically that it supplies wrappers for managing your virtual environment. So you'll be able to create, delete, and copy your virtual environments all through virtualenvwrapper. It also provides a single command that allows you to switch between environments. So rather than sourcing an activate script, and of course having to know about where that activate script is located, and then every time you want to go to another environment, actually sourcing its activate script, what virtualenvwrapper provides you is a single command called workon that allows you to list and switch between all of the available virtual environments. So it's much easier to kind of switch in and out of different virtual environments using the virtualenvwrapper than it is just doing virtualenv on the command line like you've seen us do up until now. And then in addition to that, you also have tab completion for commands, which makes it much easier to actually use virtualenv. And here we see that we have user configurable hooks. And now this is going to be the thing that takes the place of the virtualenv hooks that we just saw. Remember, I was just saying that virtualenvwrapper is going to give us a much better solution for hooking our code into all the different operations of virtualenv. Well, this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to see an example of that towards the very end. And then finally, we have a plugin system as well that allows us to create shareable extensions. And we're not going to see how to make one of these, but we'll actually use an example of this just by using virtualenvwrapper here in a bit, and I'll try to point that out to you as we do it and everything. So that's a great overview of what all virtualenvwrapper has to offer us. So let's go ahead and get it installed and start playing around with it a little bit. So let's jump back over to the terminal and go ahead and do a pip install virtualenvwrapper. And now we've got virtualenvwrapper installed. But unlike virtualenv, there are still a few more steps that we have to go through in order to get everything set up and working properly. So let's go ahead and take care of that now. And basically all that is we need to specify the directory that will be the home directory, or the place where all of our virtualenvs will be stored once we've created them. So to do that, we need to create an environment variable called workon_home and set that equal to the virtualenv directory. And set that equal to the directory that we want to be our virtualenv home directory. So let's go ahead and open up our bashrc, or in this case, I'm going to open up my .bash profile file. So let's go ahead and pop that open, and we'll go ahead and add the new variable. So again, this will be workon_home, and I'm going to set it equal to the hidden .virtualenvs folder in my home directory. And then the last thing that we need to do is source the actual virtualenvwrapper shell script. And what that'll do is add several different functions to our shell, and those functions will basically allow us to create, delete, and copy, and activate, and switch between different environments without any problem whatsoever. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So we'll source the virtualenvwrapper shell script, which was found in user local bin, and then go ahead and save this file and exit out of it. And we just need to source our bashrc file again to make sure that everything is set up properly. And when we do that, you should see a bunch of text fly by the screen real quick. And basically all that's doing is creating the .virtualenvs folder that we specified in our work on home variable. And it'll also place in there several different scripts, which will be the scripts that we use to hook into the functionality that virtualenvwrapper provides. And we can go ahead and take a look at those scripts by cding into our work on home directory. And if we just do an ls here, we can see several of the different hook scripts that are created for us. So now let's just go ahead and cd back out of here, and let's go ahead and start playing around with some of the functions that virtualenvwrapper provides for us. So the very first thing that we're going to want to do is create a virtual environment, of course. So to do that, virtualenvwrapper provides a function called make virtualenv. So that'll just be mkvir, and go ahead and hit tab and you should get the full function name from tab completion. And then we'll do a space and the name of the actual virtual environment we want to create, which we'll go ahead and do foo again. And we can see it installing the Python executable and distribute. And then down here, we see a list of some scripts again. And these are similar scripts to what we saw before. And we'll go into a little more explanation on what all this means here shortly. But for the time being, just know that these are directly related to the scripts that we saw inside of the work on home or the .virtualenvs directory. The other thing to notice whenever we create our new virtual environment using the mkvirtualenv command is this foo here at the very beginning, letting us know that not only did it create our new virtual environment, it went ahead and activated it for us. So right now, we're currently in the new foo environment that we created. And we can go ahead and take a look at the directory structure just to see if it's similar to what virtualenv created for us earlier. And to do that, there's another command called cd virtualenv. And what that'll do is just change your current directory to the virtualenv directory. So go ahead and do that now, and then do an ls. And we can see here the exact same directory structure that we saw created for us by virtualenv. And that makes total sense because virtualenvwrapper is really just a wrapper around virtualenv. So it's still using virtualenv to create our virtual environments. It's just providing a centralized repository for those environments and some other nice little wrapper features around the actual virtualenv script as well. And if we go ahead and cd into the bin directory here and do an ls, we see everything looks pretty much the exact same way as it did before. The only difference is that we have these new hook scripts like post activate and post deactivate. And like I said before, we'll see how to use these at the very end of this lesson. So now let's just go ahead and cd back to our main home directory. And I want you to call a new command called work on. And if you remember earlier, whenever we were looking at the documentation for virtualenvwrapper, it mentions that there is basically one command that you will use to switch back and forth between all of your different virtual environments. And that is this work on command that we see here. And if you call it without any arguments, just hit return, what you get is basically a list of all of the currently created virtual environments. And you can see here foo, and that's the only one that we've created so far. So if you wanted to, you could actually switch to a different environment, but unfortunately we don't actually have another environment to switch to yet. So let's go ahead and just create another one real quick so we can try out the switching mechanism. So let's just go ahead and deactivate from the current environment and then call the make virtualenv command again, and then we'll pass in the name bar. And then if we call the work on command again with no arguments, we see a list of two environments here, the bar and the foo environment. So let's go ahead and activate the foo environment first, and notice that our environment is now set to foo. And if we wanted to, we can go ahead and install the Django framework into the foo environment. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Pip install Django. And now we can just go ahead and do a pip freeze just to go ahead and make sure that Django was installed into our current virtual environment. So we see it up at the very top here. And another command that virtualenvwrapper provides is called ls site packages. And what that does, it's the same as if you were to cd into the site packages directory for the current environment and then call the ls command. And again, here we see all the packages that we've installed. And if needs be, let's say you want to take a look at the actual source code for Django, you can actually cd directly into the site packages directory very easily just by using the cd site packages command. And we can see here that we're in our foo environment's site packages directory. So now there's another very useful command that I want to show you here. And this is actually going to make use of a extension that was originally created for virtualenvwrapper that eventually got included directly into the virtualenvwrapper package. And that is the virtualenvwrapper.project extension. And now basically with projects, you have this concept of a folder that is where you keep all of your source code and everything for your current project. And basically the idea here is that you're associating that folder with a particular virtual environment. And every time that you activate that virtual environment, obviously you want to be working on the code associated with it. So why not just go ahead and put you directly into that project directory? And so now that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. Let's go ahead and stay in our foo environment and let's cd into the directory where we keep all of our code. In my case, that's my developer folder. And what we want to do is go ahead and create a project directory. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a directory called foo. And this is going to be my project directory. So what I want to do is every time I call work on foo, I want to basically be cd'd into this directory. And then the command that you call here to make that happen is called set virtualenv project. So by calling that, we've associated our current virtual environment with this particular directory. And if I go ahead and cd back to our home directory and deactivate the current environment, I can see what the set virtualenv project command did in action by simply activating the foo environment again. So we'll go ahead and call work on foo. And notice that I've been cd'd into the developer directory, which honestly is not the correct directory. I actually meant to set the virtualenv project to our foo directory. So I made a bit of a mistake there. So let's go ahead and cd into foo. And let's just go ahead and call that command again. And notice that it just tells us that foo is now pointing to the current foo directory, which is exactly what we wanted. So no big deal. You can call set virtualenv project as many times as you like, and all it's going to do is continue to change the pointer to the current directory. So now if we go ahead and do a cd back to our home directory and do a work on again, we can see that we're in the correct project directory now. And just to show you that there's no magic here, we can go ahead and take a look at what the set virtualenv project command did. And to do that, we just need to cd into our virtual environment. And if we do an ls here, we just see the typical directory structure. But if we do an ls-a to show all of our files, even the hidden ones, well, you see a file down here called .project. And if we cat that file to show the contents, we can see here that all the command has done is basically create this hidden file and add to it the path to the project directory, which is the foo directory inside of our developer folder. If we wanted to get rid of the connection between our virtual environment and that project directory, all we'd have to do is just remove this file. And then from that point on, whenever we activate the foo environment by calling work on foo, it would no longer change our directory to the foo project directory. So now the very last thing that we're going to do before we call an end to this session is take a look at the very powerful hooks that virtualenvwrapper provides us. So let's go ahead and cd into the work on home. And now I want to go ahead and go over a few of the basics here first, just to give you an idea of how everything works. And then we're going to go ahead and try adding a few hooks of our own. So the first thing I want to cover is that there's basically two levels of hooks for virtualenvwrapper. There's the global level, which is what we're looking at here. And what we mean by global level is every time you run a virtualenvwrapper command. So let's say you want to make a new virtual environment. Whenever you run that command, all of these global hooks are going to be ran. And these will be ran for every single virtual environment that you create. So that's why it's at the global level. Now, there are a subset of these hooks that are at the virtual environment level. So that's more of a local level. So in other words, whenever you add a bit of code to one of these scripts, it runs for every single virtual environment. And then whenever you cd into the virtual environment, into the bin directory there, and then add a bit of code to one of those scripts, it runs only for that virtual environment. And now what I want you to do is go ahead and open up your browser and go ahead and navigate to the virtualenvwrapper documentation on readthedocs.org. And if you click on the link for per user customization, you'll basically be shown a list of all of the different places where you can add some code and hook into the virtualenv wrapper workflow. And now the documentation here is really, really handy. If we go through and look at each one, so let's go ahead and take the first one, for instance. So we have here the hook get env details. And basically this gets called every single time you call the work on command without passing any arguments to it. And it will basically be called for every single one of the virtual environments that it prints to the screen. So now let's go ahead and look at the rest of the information it gives here. And this is the same for every single one of the hooks. So first off is the global versus local that we spoke about earlier. And in this case, the get env details script shows up both in the global space and in the local or virtual environment specific space. Next is whatever arguments are being passed into it. And in this case, whenever the script is called, it's passing into that script the current environment name. And then finally, it's telling us whether or not that script is sourced or run. And that's important information because if you actually want to create a couple of environment variables in one of these scripts, then you're going to want to do that in a place where it's sourced. If you do it where it's ran, it's going to be run in a separate process, and those environment variables that you create are not going to go into the current shell. So that's just something to keep in mind there. And so we can go ahead and scroll down through the list of all the different scripts that we have available to us and see several different other places where we can hook into the virtualenv wrapper workflow. And we're just going to go ahead and pick one of these to go ahead and add a little bit of script ourselves just to see how things work. So we'll go ahead and cd into our virtual environment and then cd into bin. We're going to go ahead and do a local change first. So let's go ahead and open up the post activate script. And you'll notice inside of here that virtualenv wrapper also provided us with a little bit of comments just letting us know exactly what the script does and when it's ran. So here we can see that this hook is run after the virtualenv has already been activated. And all we're going to do here is just print out a message just to see how this works. So we'll do an echo, just a simple little message here. So congratulations, you've just activated the foo environment. So we can see that this is specific only to foo. So let's go ahead and close out of that and deactivate. And we'll go ahead and activate our foo environment again. And we can see here that we get our message back. Congratulations, you've just activated the foo environment. So we've just made our very first virtualenv wrapper hook. And you can probably already tell that it's just much, much nicer to work on hooks in virtualenv wrapper than it is to do it in virtualenvs. Let's go ahead and deactivate from our foo environment again. And let's go ahead and cd into work on home, which this is where all of the global hooks will be located. So we want to go ahead and do something similar here. So this time we're going to do something a little more useful. Last one was just more or less something to show you how hooks work. And this time I'm going to show you how to do something that you might actually want to do on a regular basis. So we'll go ahead and open up the post make virtualenv. And this script is run every single time a new virtualenv has been created. So this is going to be very useful for us because what we can do is go ahead and install some software that we'd like to have installed for all of our virtualenvs. And for me, I have two pieces of software that every single time I create a new virtual environment, I just go ahead and install them. It's just a given that I'm going to have them there. I basically can't live without these two tools. And that's basically IPython, which is a really great, super powerful Python interpreter or Python REPL with tons and tons of power beyond what I use it for. But if nothing more, just for a good interpreter to run Python at the command line, this is head and shoulders above just running Python by itself. And the other one is IPDB, which is basically just a Python debugger, just like PDB, but instead of using the Python interpreter, it uses the IPython shell. So it's just a much nicer environment to do your debugging in. And then we can go ahead and save that and jump out of here and just see that it worked by creating a brand new environment. So we'll call make virtualenv. But before I do that, let me go ahead and call work on again, just to make sure I don't make a virtual environment that's already been made. So it looks like we got foo and bar already. So I'll go ahead and do make virtual environment baz. And we see it installs everything that it normally does, like setup tools and pip. And then down here, we see that it's downloading and unpacking IPython currently. So our post make virtualenv hook has ran, and it looks like it's done everything we asked it to. It's also installed IPDB as well. And we can just go ahead and verify by running pip freeze real quick, and we see IPDB and IPython both listed. And if I go ahead and run IPython, then we see my nice IPython interpreter running right here. So that should pretty much be all you need to know to get you started with creating hooks for your virtualenv wrapper workflow. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode as well. Over the course of the last 2 episodes, we've learned about 2 extremely powerful tools for creating completely partitioned development environments. If you haven't used at least virtualenv in the past, I really hope that you've seen the power it provides and begin using it for all of your future development, and that you also take advantage of the extremely useful virtualenv wrapper as well. I also hope that you've enjoyed the first 2 episodes in this new series covering tools for Python power users. If so, stay tuned, as I have several more tools that I'm planning to cover in future episodes. So until then, happy Python coding.